Let's continue. Before doing anything to the inputs, we want to go back and define like the information that we need to fill the inputs with. For example, like the email address for the login, the password also for the sign up, but let's secure only for the sign in. So look what I'm gonna do. Just simply go to the top right here, and here we can define like actually our user, which is gonna be like that holds all the information. So user and then set user, so we can change the information with, and then the use state as usual, and then simply we're gonna pass some values. In the beginning it's gonna be empty. But what we're gonna pass is simply we can go right here and then let's call it initial values, for example, and this is the initial values. For example, it's gonna be login email, and in the beginning is gonna be empty, and then also we're gonna have the login password, which is gonna be the informations that we fill in the two inputs, the email and the password. And I can pass the initial values right here for the user. So the user information is going to be coming from this object, and that means the user has the login email and login password. Also we can just like extract these informations by just going to the values that we need. For example, like login email, where is it? And then also login password, and then simply we're going to extract it from the user. So now if we want to access this login email, we don't have to go user dot and then login email. We can actually just simply get it this way. And what we can do simply that we have the login email, we can just simply go back and let's pass the rest of the information right here, because our input does need, you know, quite other information, like for example the type. So the type of this, as it's the email, we can just pass it as email or just simply text and do the validation for ourselves. And the icons, this is going to be email icon, sorry for the email address. And then also after that, we need to pass like the name of it. And the name of it is going to be the login email. This is very important. And there is also the on change, if you know, like the on change that we have in all inputs. That's also something that we can do right now if you want. Like for example, I can go on change, and this is going to be handle change. Simply we're gonna create that, so handle change, and then simply I can go maybe right here and then const handle change arrow function, and this is simply gonna get the event. Okay, we need to get the event, and we need to extract the informations that we need from the event, which is gonna be the name and the value. So we can go, and I'm gonna explain everything like in a better way, just don't worry. The name, and also we need the value, and we're gonna extract that from the event.target. Okay, so simply we can take the name of it, which is going to be this one, the name, and then we're going to fill it with the value that we have on that input. It's actually that simple. So by going to set user, so we can change the information of that user, and what we can do is take the whole object, you know, and spread the values of it, so we don't do nothing to the user, but we actually go to the value with that name and change the name of the value of it to the new value that we get. And that means anything that we type on that input will be added to the user. So if I go back right here and then console log user like that, and then give me a minute, I need to check something out. Yeah, that's all. If I go back right now right here, and then sorry, I need to open the localhost 3000. Okay, and then actually sorry again, account login, then F12. And then what we can see in the console, as we are right now in the console, okay, as we see, we console log the user. So we have the login email empty and the login password empty. But if I went right here and start writing something, as you see right here, is not gonna change. And the reason for that is because we're not really applying the name to the actual input, because we just right here, if you go back here, you can see we only pass the name. Okay, but we didn't actually use it in the inputs inside right here, inside the input itself. Okay, so right here we can add the rest of the information. So simply you can spread the rest of the props. That's something you can do. If you don't know, let me just show you something. You can remove everything from here and just pass the props. And if you need to get something, you just go props dot, like for example placeholder dot name, etc. But we need to get it this way. And then what we can do is simply get something that is called the field and meta. This is like from Formix, so field and also meta, and then we're gonna get it using the use field, and what we're gonna pass to it is the props. So that's gonna take all the informations from the props, and we need to import the use field. Okay, it's already imported, and that means, like for example right here, instead of the type to be text, we can simply go field dot type. okay, and it's going to get it automatically from the props, and that means the type of this input is going to be the actual type that's right here, which is text. And also, for example, the placeholder, we done that. The name, which is something also important, I'm just going to go right here, and then I'm going to go for the name, and it's going to be field dot name. Okay, and we have the placeholder and the rest. And even though we did that, we need to like pass the rest of the informations, and that we do that by just simply spreading the values of the field and also spreading the values of the meta, the props, the field and the props, because we're gonna need the informations in the field and the props to actually show the error, etc. And that way now we actually have the name assigned. That means if any value changes for that name, for that input, we're gonna see the new value. And now, as you see, go back right here. Let me go to the bar, and now let's try and write something. And as you see in the login email, we see the changes. I feel like this is pretty simple. Instead of passing it directly from type right here, we're actually gonna extract it from the props using the field and meta, because we're gonna need it to actually track the changes on the inputs, so we know the errors, etc. This is pretty simple. Just take it easy, and you're gonna understand this. So let's do the same with the other input. So we can copy this input right here, the login input, and then simply the type of this is going to be password. And then also let me get the value. Let me get it, login password, and this is going to be the name of it, and the icon is going to be password, and then also for the placeholder is going to be password. Save that, go back right here. We can see that we have both of them now. Let's wait. Okay, so for the email, this is going to be some random email, and you can see changes on the console. And for the password, you can write any password hidden, and you can actually see the password right here. And this button, it's done by default in the Edge browser, so this is not something that I've added. You can do that easily. It's not that hard if you want to do it manually for all browsers. So maybe I can do that later. But this is like, now we have the login email and the login password. We can actually like get the informations there. But there is something that we didn't do. You gotta understand, with Formic, the values are not like really considered manually. So you need like to do them yourself, because in the beginning we done Formic. If you go back right here to the sign in, okay, right here, Formic, we didn't add any like parameters or any settings for it. So we want to do something that is called enable reinitialize, and that means we want to reinitialize the values that we use right here, because Formic, it has its own values, and that means I can go right here, initial values, and then I'm gonna pass the values that I need. Sorry, because by default you can just simply come right here and select, for example, email, okay, and then pass it like that. Okay, sorry, I need two parentheses right here, like that. So for example, this is, I'm passing the email, which is a value only known in this form by define it right here. So for example, the login email here is not known, and that's what counts this enable reinitialize, and that means we can use values that we have in our state and not really known only in the form itself. And by that, when we use initial values, we can just simply pass the values, like, which is login email, and now we don't have really to initialize it like with a value, because we know the value of it comes and stored in the state, and the same way is going to be for the login password, like that. And that's actually very important to initialize the values. And there is something that is called the validation schema. And the validation schema is something to validate the inputs. Everything you write, we can actually validate it. So I can go right here and call it, for example, login validation, and we can use yup to validate what we write right here, and then depending on what we write, we can define if there is an error or not. So let me show you how easy is this. So let me copy the name of it right here. And first of all, let's import yup. We already installed it when we installed the Formic. So maybe I just can go right here. So import all. So we're gonna get everything, and we're just gonna call it yup from yup. It's that simple. And simply you can go anywhere right here and just simply const, and you're gonna name, which is the login validation object, and that's what we created, and this is simply gonna be equal yup, and then dot object, okay, because this is our object for, you know, the validation, and simply it takes an object inside, and then you pass all the values you need, you know, to validate. For example, the login email, okay, just like that. This is pretty simple. So for the validation, you just go yup dot string, as it should be a string. That's the first thing. So that's the first thing, okay? And then the second thing, it needs to be required. So that means if it's not filled, we're gonna show an error. And required, you can just leave it empty and its login email is required. But if you want like a custom, you know, a message that you want, you can just be like email address is required, like that. And that's it. This is how you do it. Also, this is an email, so we need to make sure it's an email. So dot email, and then we can have like a custom email, which is going to be please enter a valid email address. Okay, I think this is nothing gets easier than this. So yep, it's very simple and easy to use. I've used it in my other courses, so I like it a lot, and it's pretty simple. And then also yep, it should be a string, and then also it's required please enter a password, and that's it. We don't need to validate no length, nothing in the password. I feel like this is how it should be done. And now you actually like you have to decide like to, let me just make sure. For example, if you go to Formik, when this error is gonna happen, let me just go. Okay, so let me teach you something about Formik that is pretty awesome to know about. So there is something for the meta that we talked about, field and meta. If you go back right here, I need to explain this, you know, in a good way. So we have the field and meta is pretty good. So the meta, we can track few things. So the first thing that we can track is called meta.touched, and meta.touched mean that I clicked on the inputs like that. So when I click on this, then the meta.touch is true. Okay, when you click on it, this for example for the file name right here, the meta touch is false. But if I click on it, now it becomes true. And that's something you need to know. And if we have an error, something like the validation, there is something not right, like for example we didn't fill it and we touched it, that means the meta.that error also now has an error inside it and it's not null. So what you want to do is when the meta is true, that means we clicked on the input, because we're not going to show an error before even clicking on the input or like click on the button to submit. You want to make sure when we click on the input, then the meta touch is true, then we show if we have an error, and then if we have an error, we actually show it. That means I can go, for example, right here, for example, we had this size.input. I can just simply like have backticks and then simply this is, you know, size.input. And for the second one, we can have another test and we can see if meta.touched, that means we clicked on the button. That's pretty simple. And the meta.error. Okay, there is an error. And now we can actually show like another class name that we can add, which is going to be, for example, size.error. Else we have nothing. And now if we touch in, if we click on that input and also we have an error, we can show we can add a styling, which is a class name that is going to be error. And the reason for that, I can just go right here, .error, and just simply make the background, for example, red. And that's what I'm trying to show you right here. So if I go back right here, close everything, and now the email address is required. So if I click on it and I click outside, you see now the meta is just now is gonna see there is an error because we didn't write anything. It's required and it needs an email address. Now we have an error. Same with the password. If I click on it now, it's such. If I click outside, okay, we can see there is an error. If I write something right here, I click outside, it's still an error because this is not a valid email address. But if I went like a valid email address and click outside, you can see that there is no error. And that's by just showing you the red background. We still need to do other things, but I'm just showing you like briefly how things is done. So one thing that we need first is to go to the base and we add something that is called the error color. Okay, and this is a color that we can use, you know, many times, which is gonna represent the error color. So if D, so it's quite red, so 010169. This one, so it's called error color. So I can go right here, and then error color like that. And this is the background. Let me try again. Okay, yeah, this is, and we can go, maybe we can call it, because we could have like different, so maybe we can call this light error color. Yeah, maybe because it's quite light, we're gonna have, you know, many of them. So light error color, and then go back right here and change this to light error color. And other than that, let me add importance to make sure it applies no matter what. And also we're gonna have a margin tab to be like 5 rem, and I'm gonna explain this why, because we need the space up, like in the top we need that space, which is gonna be 5 rem, so we can have our like box. This one, let me explain it again. this box right here, we need like 5 rem for it. So we're gonna push the element down. As you see, the password is here. Now we're gonna push it down when we click outside, because we need to have space for this, you know, message. That's what all I'm trying to do. Let's add also the importance. I can also get to the input, and I'm gonna go to the color of it, and I'm gonna make it to be white, okay, because it's black. Now when we get white, so it goes well with the red color. As you see, it changes to white right here. Okay, there is something wrong. Yeah, let me remove one right here like that. Let me go back, and you can see it now. It's not gonna be, it shouldn't be like black, it should be white. So if I click outside, let me remove everything was, sorry, and I go back. Okay, so it should be like okay, it didn't apply. It should be white. Oh, sorry. That should be what, that's like the placeholder. So maybe we can select the placeholder like that, and then for the placeholder we can make the color white. Sorry, my bad. And then we can add importance. We're gonna have them for both. So for email address, if we have an error, we still show it white, and if we're not filling anything, it should be white. So you see the space, and you see it moves a bit down because right here we need the box to write everything there. And other than the input, there is something, the SVG. So we can also go to the SVG, and we're just gonna fill it white. Okay, add importance, and also we need to stroke if the icon needs stroking. Okay, to be white like that, because let me show you the difference. Like this icon you see right here is filled because there is a color inside it, and for the second icon you need to stroke it because it's like just like a border. It's like just lines. It doesn't have like a color inside it. That's all I'm trying to explain. So now let me remove everything, so we don't have any error right here for the password. Now if you have an error, this is what's gonna happen. It's gonna be pushed down, the color changes for the placeholder. That's also that we write. If it's still wrong, it's going to be still white, okay, as you write. And also the SVG changes to white. So this is all cool. So in the next video, we actually will work on the box right here and show the message or the